The wind at 15 below cut through Montana pines like broken glass. Sam Garrison stepped onto his porch with coffee, steam dying before it reached his face. The stars were fading to gray, three figures huddled under a threadbare quilt at the edge of his porch. Frost glittered on the boards thick as salt. The girl's eyes snapped open. 16, maybe? Her hands were cracked and bleeding, clutching papers to her chest. Two children behind her, a boy, blue-lipped and silent, and a little girl who wasn't crying. That was worse than crying. "Walked 12 miles, the girl whispered. Her voice was raw as torn metal. "He made me sign. We're collateral now." Sam looked at the papers, legal stamps, a trace signature, the smell of kerosene and unwashed wool. Then he heard it, distant but clear, the chime of a silver pocket watch. Hoofbeats coming fast through the snow. The girl's face went white. "Caleb and Iris, the contract says they transfer with the land." Sam moved before he thought. He set the coffee down and crossed the porch in 3 strides. The girl flinched when he bent toward her, but he was already lifting the smallest child. The little one was limp, too quiet. "Inside," he said. The girl tried to stand. Her legs wouldn't hold. The boy caught her arm, 7 years old and shaking so hard his teeth rattled. Sam hooked his free arm under the girl's shoulder and half-carried both of them through the door. The warmth of the house hit like a wall. The smell of last night's fire, coffee grounds, leather. "We'll dirty your floors," the girl whispered. Sam kicked the door shut behind them. "Floors wash." He set the little one on the rug by the hearth and went to work. Stripped the wet clothes, boots worn clear through at the toes, stockings more whole than wool. The boy's feet were purple. The girl's fingers wouldn't bend. Sam wrapped them in every blanket he owned, piled wood on the fire until it roared. The boy started crying finally. That was better. Meant he could still feel. The girl's eyes stayed open, watching Sam like he might change his mind. Like this might be a trap. "What's your name?" Sam asked. "Rose." Her lips were cracked. "Rose Henley. This is Caleb. That's Iris." "How old's the baby?" "4. She's not—" Rose's voice broke. "She's not waking up." Sam crossed to the child and pressed his fingers to her throat. The pulse was there. Weak and slow, but there. He'd seen hypothermia before. Lost 2 ranch hands to it back in '71. "She's breathing," he said. "Needs warmth, needs time." He moved to the stove and poured milk into a pan. Set it to heat. The sound of it beginning to simmer filled the kitchen. Rose watched him from the floor, still clutching those papers. Sam could see the stamps now. Official territorial seals. The kind that made men with money dangerous. "Who's coming?" he asked. Rose looked at the door. "Victor Drummond. He was appointed my guardian after my father died." "Oh, when?" 2 months ago. Papa had a mine collapse near Silverton. They found him 3 days later." Sam stirred the milk. The smell of it warming cut through the cold. "You're 16. "Yes, sir." "Married?" Her face flushed. "Was. For 3 months. Thomas died of fever in November." Sam didn't ask more. A girl married at 15, widowed at 16, orphaned 2 months later. That was Montana territory. That was how women got erased. "Drummond took you in? Took the land?" Rose's hands shook on the papers. 400 acres my papa left me, spring on the north parcel. Drummond said I needed a guardian to manage it. Made me sign papers. I couldn't read all of it. The words were too long. Sam poured the warm milk into a cup, brought it to her. "What did the papers say?" "That he'd care for me and Caleb and Iris. That the land would be managed until I turned 21. Her voice dropped. "I didn't know about the rest. Not until yesterday." "What rest?" Rose looked at the children. Caleb was starting to warm, color coming back to his face. Iris still hadn't stirred. "The contract says the land transfers to him. For my care, $200 settlement." She met Sam's eyes. Hers were full of shame and rage. "And Caleb and Iris, they're listed as assets. Property included with the land deed." Sam's hand tightened on the cup. $200. For 400 acres with a spring. In 1884, that land was worth $20,000. Maybe more if the railroad came through. "He sold you," Sam said quietly. "And them." Rose's voice cracked. "I ran, last night. He locked us in the attic room, said we were getting sent east on the orphan train. I broke the window. We climbed down. 12 miles in this cold. I didn't know where else to go. The man at the general store in Silverton, he said you were decent. Ornery, but decent." Sam almost smiled. That sounded like Everett. Rose tried to drink the milk, but her hands shook too hard. Sam held the cup for her. She drank like she hadn't had water in days. "Mr. Garrison," she whispered. "If he finds us, he has papers. Legal papers. Court stamped. I saw. He'll take them back. And I can't—" Her breathing hitched. "Caleb's only 7. Iris is 4. They don't understand what's happening. They just know they're hungry and cold and scared. Sam looked at the boy. Caleb had stopped crying. He was staring at Sam with those two old eyes children got when the world broke early. Rose swayed. Her eyes rolled back. Sam caught her before she hit the floor. That's when he heard it. The pounding on the door, fists like hammers. A voice outside, sharp and righteous. Rose Henley. "You stole my property! The marshal's coming at sunrise!" The little girl, Iris, still hadn't opened her eyes. Sam laid Rose on the sofa and covered her with another blanket. She was unconscious, but breathing steady. He checked Iris again. The child's pulse was stronger. She'd live if she stayed warm. The pounding came again, harder. Sam crossed to the door. His rifle stood in the corner where it always did. He took it, didn't load it, didn't need to, just held it low and opened the door. The man on the porch was 45, maybe, well-dressed. Wool coat that cost more than most men made in a year, leather gloves, boots polished despite the snow. His face was clean-shaven, thin-lipped, the kind of face that smiled in courtrooms. "Samuel Garrison," the man said. Not a question. "That's right. Victor Drummond. I'm looking for my ward, Rose Henley, and her siblings." He looked past Sam into the house. "I believe you have them." Sam didn't move from the doorway. The cold air poured in, but he didn't feel it. "What makes you think that?" "I tracked them here. 3 sets of footprints, 2 small, 1 dragging." Drummond's smile didn't reach his eyes. "She broke my window and ran. The girl's disturbed, Mr. Garrison. Prone to fits, she needs supervision. She needs medical attention, which I'm happy to provide, if you'll step aside." Sam looked at the man's hands, smooth, no calluses, the kind of hands that held pens, not tools. In his vest pocket, a silver watch chain gleamed. "Show me your papers," Sam said. Drummond reached inside his coat, slow, deliberate, and pulled out a leather folder. Unfolded it. Official territorial court documents, stamped and sealed. The ink was still dark, barely 2 weeks old. "Guardianship decree," Drummond said, dated January 5th. Rose Henley, age 16, and her half-siblings Caleb and Iris Morrison, orphaned November 20th when their father Samuel Henley died in a mine accident. "I was appointed legal guardian by Judge Albertson in Silverton." Sam read the papers. Everything looked legitimate. The language was dense, legal terms wrapped in more legal terms. But buried in the 3rd paragraph, transfer of property assets including Henley parcel, 400 acres, for provision of care. Settlement, $200. "She's a child," Sam said. "Exactly. Which is why the court appointed me." Drummond tucked the papers away. "I understand your concern, Mr. Garrison. You have a reputation as a decent man. But this is a legal matter. Rose is confused, frightened. She doesn't understand what's best for her. She understands you're trying to steal her land." Drummond's smile thinned. "I'm protecting her inheritance. That spring on her property, do you know what it's worth? With the railroad coming through, that land could be valuable, very valuable. A young girl can't manage that kind of asset." Sam's jaw worked. He knew that spring. It was the source that fed his own ranch. 15,000 acres, 2,000 head of cattle. Without that water, come summer drought, his entire operation would collapse. "The spring," Sam said slowly. "Yes." Drummond's eyes glittered. "I'm sure you understand the importance of water rights in this territory. I'm merely ensuring proper management until Rose comes of age." Sam saw it then, the angle. The railroad wanted an easement, Drummond wanted to control the land. And Sam's cattle depended on water that flowed from property this man was trying to steal. "She's staying here," Sam said. "That's not your decision." "It is until the marshal says different." Drummond's face hardened. "The marshal will be here at sunrise, with the circuit judge if necessary. You're harboring a legal ward without authority, Mr. Garrison. That's kidnapping." He turned to leave, then stopped, looked back. "Those children in there," Drummond said quietly. "They're part of the estate. Assets included with the land transfer. When I take Rose back, I take them too. That's the law." He pulled out his pocket watch. The silver case caught the lantern light. The chime when it opened was clear and sharp, the same sound from before. He checked the time, snapped it shut. "Sunrise, Mr. Garrison. I suggest you think carefully." Drummond walked to his horse, mounted. Sam noticed the animal was fresh, not winded. The man hadn't ridden hard. He'd taken his time, confident the children couldn't get far. The sound of hoofbeats faded into the snow. Sam was closing the door when he heard another horse, coming fast. He raised the rifle again, but this rider he knew. Ben Cho, his surveyor and oldest friend, Chinese-American and the best landman in the territory. Ben swung down before his horse fully stopped. "Sam." He was breathing hard. "Trouble." "I know. Drummond was just here." "It's worse than you think." Ben pulled a telegram from his coat. The paper crackled in the cold. This came to the land office an hour ago, from the railroad. Sam read it by lantern light. The words were simple, but the meaning wasn't. Survey delayed to May. Need clear title to Henley 400-acre parcel by May 1st. $50,000 easement payment pending. Sam looked up. $50,000. That's what this was about. Drummond wasn't just stealing land, he was positioning for a railroad fortune. There's more, Ben said. His voice dropped. Those guardianship papers. Dated January 5th, right? That's what they say. I saw Rose's father in Silverton on January 12th, at Everett's store, buying winter feed. He was sick, Sam, coughing bad, but he was alive. The words hung in the cold air. Drummond dated the papers before the man died, Sam said. Or backdated them after, Ben said. Either way, it's fraud. Inside the house, the little girl finally cried. Sam brought Iris to the fire. The child's eyes fluttered open. She looked at him, a stranger's face, and started to wail. The sound filled the house like an alarm. Rose woke at that cry, stumbled off the sofa and reached for her sister. It's all right, Iris. It's all right. But the little girl wouldn't stop. 4 years old, and she'd been carried through a blizzard, half frozen, taken into a stranger's house. Of course, she screamed. Caleb climbed off his chair and wrapped his arms around both of them. The boy's voice was steady. We're safe, Iris. This man helped us. Sam stepped back, gave them space. Ben stood in the doorway watching. I'll make breakfast, Sam said. Nobody argued. He worked at the stove while Rose held Iris, rocking her. The smell of bacon filled the kitchen. Coffee boiling, biscuits from yesterday reheated. Not much, but it was hot and there was enough. He set 4 plates on the table. 4. He hadn't used 4 plates in 15 years. The children stared at the food like it might disappear. Eat, Sam said. They ate. Caleb shoveled bacon into his mouth, barely chewing. Iris picked at her biscuit with tiny fingers, eyes still wide and afraid. Rose ate slow, watching the door. Ben poured himself coffee. Marshall's coming at 7. That gives us an hour. What do we tell him? Rose asked. The truth, Sam said. That you ran because Drummond was selling you and the children. That those papers are dated wrong. But they're legal papers, Rose whispered. Court stamped. Legal doesn't always mean right. The sound of wagon wheels outside. Sam reached for his rifle again, but Ben put a hand on his arm. That's Martha. Sam opened the door. Martha Quinn, his cook and housekeeper, stood on the porch with a basket. 58 years old, gray hair in a tight bun, eyes that missed nothing. Heard you had company, she said. Walked past him into the house without waiting for invitation. Looked at Rose. Stopped. Lord have mercy, Martha whispered. You're Anna's daughter. Rose blinked. You knew my mother? Before she married your father, Anna Whitmore. We worked together at the boarding house in Butte. Martha set the basket down, pulled out clean clothes, a woman's dress, 2 small shirts. These were my daughters. She's grown now. Living in Oregon, she turned to Sam. This girl's legitimate Henley blood. I'll swear it on a Bible. Rose's eyes filled. Thank you. Martha touched her face, gentle. You look just like her. A knock at the door, softer than Drummond's pounding. Sam opened it to find Doc Frazier, 70 years old and still writing calls in the middle of winter. He carried his black bag, the leather worn smooth with 40 years of use. Ben sent word you needed me, Doc said. Sam let him in. Doc examined Iris first. Listened to her breathing, checked her fingers and toes, then Caleb, then Rose. When he finished, he pulled Sam aside. His voice was low, but Rose heard anyway. The little one has mild pneumonia. She'll recover with warmth and rest. The boy has frostbite, but he'll keep his toes. The girl, Doc looked at Rose. She's malnourished, dehydrated. Those marks on her wrists are from restraints. Recent, 2, maybe 3 days old. Sam's hands curled into fist. I'll write it up, Doc said. Medical testimony, if you need it. At 7 exactly, the marshal arrived. Sam recognized him. Reeves, a fair man, which was rare. He wore his badge on the outside of his coat, so you could see it clear. Marshal Reeves took off his hat when he came inside. Looked at the children, at Doc, at Martha, at Ben with his telegram, at Rose with her bruised wrists. Sam handed him Drummond's papers. Reeves read them slow. These say you're her legal guardian, Mr. Drummond, Reeves said, then looked up. But Drummond ain't here. He was, Sam said, an hour ago. Demanded I turn her over. And you said? No. Reeves folded the papers. Miss Henley, did you run from Mr. Drummond's house? Yes, sir. Why? Rose's voice shook. He locked us in the attic. Said we were going east on the orphan train, that Caleb and Iris would be separated, sent to different families. I couldn't let that happen. Did he hurt you? She touched her wrists. He said I needed to learn discipline. Doc stepped forward. I've documented her injuries, Marshal. Fresh bruising consistent with restraints. The children show signs of neglect. Inadequate clothing, malnutrition. Reeves looked at Ben. You have something to say? Ben handed him the telegram. Railroad's paying $50,000 for easement rights on that Henley parcel. And those guardianship papers are dated January 5th. I saw Rose's father alive on January 12th. The marshal's jaw tightened. He looked at the papers again, at Rose, at the children eating biscuits at Sam's table. This needs a judge, he said finally. But I'm not hauling children back to a man who locked them in an attic. He looked at Sam. I'm granting temporary custody to you, Mr. Garrison, pending territorial court review. Hearing set for March 15th in Silverton. Rose's breath came out in a sob. Temporary, Reeves warned. Drummond's a railroad lawyer. He'll come back with better documentation. You better have your proof ready. He put his hat back on, touched the brim. Ma'am, children. When he left, Rose turned to Sam. March 15th, that's 2 months. 2 months to build a case, Ben said. Sam looked at the children, at Rose. At the home, he'd kept empty for 15 years. Then we build it, he said. February passed like a held breath. The children thrived. Iris stopped flinching at loud sounds. Started laughing when Martha made faces at her in the kitchen. The sound of it, that bright child's laugh, filled corners of the house Sam had forgotten existed. Caleb followed Sam everywhere, learning to feed the horses, to check their hooves, to read weather in the way they flicked their ears. The boy was careful, precise, asked questions in a quiet voice. Why do you count them every morning? So I know if one's missing, Sam said. 2,000 head, worth about $60,000. That's my life's work. Caleb's eyes went wide. 60,000? Cattle and land, 15,000 acres. But it's the water that matters most. Without water, the cattle die. Without cattle, the land's just dirt. The boy nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. Children who grew up hard learned value early. Rose changed too. Color came back to her face. Her hands healed. Martha fed her until she stopped looking like wind could knock her over. In the evenings, she sat at Sam's desk, studying his land documents. What's this mark? She asked one night, pointed to a symbol on an old survey map. Surveyor's mark. Ben Cho made that in '68, means he measured it legal. Every boundary corner has one carved in stone or wood, BC, and the year. How do you prove land is yours? Deed, survey, witness testimony, and time. I've been here 40 years. That counts. She traced the property lines with her finger. My father's 400 acres. Where are they? Sam showed her. North parcel, the spring clearly marked. That spring feeds your ranch, Rose said. Wasn't a question. Has for 40 years. Your father and I had an agreement. Handshake deal. He let me use the water. I helped him with supplies when he needed it. But there's no paper. No. Sam looked at her. That might be a problem. In early March, Sam showed her the surveyor's transit. It sat in his study on a shelf covered in dust. Brass and glass, precise and beautiful. The smell of old metal and neglect. Ben used this to map the territory, Sam said. Every legitimate claim was measured with this instrument. See here, he pointed to initials engraved in the base. BC 1868, that's his mark, like a signature. Rose touched it carefully. It's beautiful. It's proof. Ben marked every boundary with stone cairns, carved his initials, deep so they'd last. If there's ever a dispute, you find the markers. They don't lie. She looked at him. You think there'll be a dispute? I think Drummond didn't spend $50,000 on railroad money just to walk away. And the telegraph came March 10th. Sam read it twice. Court hearing moved to May 1st, judge's illness. New judge assigned, Mercer. Ben arrived an hour after the telegram. His face was grim. Mercer's railroad friendly. Drummond probably arranged it. Can he do that? If he knows the right people. Ben sat at the kitchen table. The smell of coffee, bread, wood smoke. Normal things that felt suddenly fragile. Sam, we need to be ready for anything. On May 1st, they rode to Silverton. Sam, Rose, and Ben. Martha stayed with the children. The town square was busy. Spring thaw had brought people out. Mud everywhere. The smell of wet earth and horse dung. The courthouse was stone. Cold inside despite the season. Judge Mercer presided. 52, thin-faced, eyes like a banker counting money. Drummond sat at the plaintiff's table with a territorial lawyer. Both wore suits that cost more than horses. Drummond's silver watch chain gleamed. The hearing began. Preliminaries, statements. Rose testified about her father's death, the guardianship, the locked attic. Her voice steady, strong. Then Drummond's lawyer stood. Your Honor, we'd like to present additional documentation. He laid a deed on the judge's desk. Old paper, official seals. The rustle of it carried through the silent courtroom. This is the original deed to the Henley 400 acres. Dated 1869. It shows that the land was owned by Mr. Drummond's father, Charles Drummond, before Samuel Henley claimed to purchase it in 1870. Sam's stomach dropped. Ben grabbed his arm. Well, that's impossible. Judge Mercer examined the deed. This appears legitimate. Territorial seal, proper signatures. Your Honor, Drummond's lawyer continued, if this deed is valid, and we believe it is, then Samuel Henley never had legal right to that property. His sale to Rose's mother was fraudulent, which means Rose Henley has no legitimate inheritance. Rose made a sound, small, broken. Furthermore, the lawyer said, turning to Sam, Mr. Garrison has been using water from a spring on property that legally belongs to the Drummond estate for 15 years, without permission or payment. Sam stood. That's a lie. The judge's gavel cracked. Mr. Garrison, sit down. Drummond's lawyer smiled. We're filing a countersuit against Samuel Garrison for unauthorized use of water rights. 15 years at market rate. We estimate $40,000 in damages, plus immediate cessation of water access. The courtroom erupted. Sam heard it like he was underwater. $40,000, his entire water supply cut off, 2,000 cattle, $60,000 in livestock. His life's work, gone. Your Honor, Ben was on his feet. That deed needs to be verified. Let me examine. The deed is sealed and registered, Mercer said. This court will review all claims. Full trial set for May 1st as scheduled. This was merely a preliminary hearing. He looked at Sam, cold. Mr. Garrison, until this matter is resolved, the water rights on that parcel are disputed. Use at your own legal risk. The gavel fell. Outside the courthouse, spring sun warming the muddy street, Drummond approached. He pulled out his watch, checked it. That chime again, clear as a bell. He smiled. Settle now, Garrison. Give me the girl. Pay me $30,000 for the trouble you've caused. Or watch your ranch dry up and blow away come summer. Sam looked at Rose. She was crying, silent tears down her face. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I'll go back. I'll sign whatever he wants. I won't let you lose everything for us. Drummond's smile widened. Smart girl. Ben's hand tightened on Sam's shoulder. Sam looked at the man, at his expensive suit, his polished boots, his clean hands that had never built anything. No, Sam said. Drummond's smile faded. What? We go to trial, May 1st, full testimony, every document examined. Sam stepped closer. You want this land for that railroad money, $50,000. I understand greed, but you made one mistake. What's that? You threatened my water. That makes this personal. Drummond's face darkened. You'll lose everything. Maybe, but you'll lose too, and I'll make sure of it. They rode home in silence. Rose stared at her hands. Ben was grim. Sam thought about 15,000 acres, 40 years of work, 2,000 cattle that would die of thirst if that spring was cut off. He'd risked it all. For 3 children he'd known 2 months, his wife's voice echoed in memory. Don't let grief make you small. He wasn't being small. For the first time in 15 years, he was choosing something bigger than land and money. He was choosing them. They arrived at the ranch after dark. The children were asleep. Martha met them at the door, read their faces, said nothing. Sam stood in his study. The surveyor's transit gleamed in lamplight. 40 years of records lined the shelves. Ledgers, documenting every head of cattle, every water measurement, every expense. His entire life reduced to ink and paper. He heard footsteps. Rose stood in the doorway. I'm leaving, she said. Sam turned. What? Tomorrow morning. I'll take Caleb and Iris back to Silverton. Sign whatever Drummond wants. Her voice cracked but held. I won't watch you lose everything because you tried to help us. Rose, $60,000, Mr. Garrison, your cattle, your ranch, 40 years of work. Tears ran down her face, but she didn't wipe them. I'm 16. I've got nothing. You've got everything. It's not a fair trade. Sam crossed to her, put his hands on her shoulders. The smell of wood smoke and coffee clung to her dress. You're wrong, he said quietly. I don't have everything. I had land, cattle, empty rooms, and quiet dinners. A son who left 10 years ago because I loved this ranch more than I loved him. His voice roughened. Then 3 frozen children showed up, and for the first time since my wife died, this house felt like a home. But your ranch can be rebuilt. Money can be earned back. Land can be bought again. He looked at her, really looked. But family? Once you walk away from family, you don't get that back. I learned that lesson once. Cost me my son. I won't make that mistake again. Rose sobbed. Once. Hard. Then she wrapped her arms around him and held on. Sam held her back. Thought about his boy, David. Wherever he was, whatever he was doing. The letters Sam sent that never got answered. We fight, he said. Together, whatever comes. She nodded against his chest. The next morning, Ben arrived before breakfast. He had documents spread across the kitchen table. Maps, survey records, land office registries. I've been at the territorial office for 3 days, Ben said. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, looking at that deed Drummond produced. And it's registered. Official seal. But look at this. He pointed to a notation in the margin. Registration date, 1883, 4 years ago. Sam leaned closer. But the deed itself is dated 1869. Exactly. Which means either Drummond's father held an unregistered deed for 14 years, unlikely, or someone created a backdated document in 1883. Rose brought coffee, set it down carefully. Can you prove it's fake? The registration book shows signs of page insertion, different ink, paper that's slightly newer than the surrounding pages. Ben pulled out photographs. I documented everything, but it's circumstantial. We need physical evidence. Like what? Sam asked. Ben unrolled an old survey map, 1868, his handwriting in the margins. When I marked the boundaries for this territory, I carved markers at every major corner. Stone cairns with BC and the year carved deep. They're permanent, undeniable. He pointed to a spot on Rose's property, near the spring boundary marker. I placed it on the north face of a granite outcrop, carved BC 1868, 2 feet deep. Ben looked up. If we find that marker, it proves my survey came first, which proves the legitimate boundaries, which proves Rose's father bought valid land in 1870. Where is it? Sam asked. I buried it deeper in 1870. We had a rock slide. I was reinforcing the area and covered it with more stone for stability, but I noted it in my records. He tapped the map. North face, 2 feet down, under the third spur. Rose leaned over the map. That's on my property. The disputed property, Ben corrected. If we dig now, Drummond can claim we're tampering with evidence. The door opened. Judge Harriet Blackwell walked in without knocking. 68 years old, white hair and a crown of braids, eyes sharp as broken glass. She'd been territorial judge for 20 years before retiring. Heard you had trouble, she said to Sam. Judge Mercer recused you. From the case. Not from giving advice to an old friend. She sat at the table uninvited. That 1869 deed, it stinks worse than a 3-day corpse. We know, Ben said, but we need proof. Judge Blackwell looked at the map, at the marker notation. Montana Territory Law, Section 47, Emergency Boundary Verification. If fraud is suspected, property owners can request immediate survey verification. But you have to file notice with the county clerk 3 days before excavation. Sam's pulse quickened. Legal cover. Barely. Mercer could still rule the evidence tainted, but it's better than nothing. She stood. File the notice today, dig in 3 days. And Sam? Yes? You're fighting a railroad lawyer with gambling debts and 50,000 reasons to win. He won't play fair. Don't expect the law to protect you just because you're right. She left as abruptly as she'd arrived. Sam looked at Ben. Can you find that marker in 3 days? If it's still there. Ben rolled up his maps. But Sam, that spring's on disputed land. If we dig and Drummond catches us, he'll use it against us in court, claim we destroyed evidence or planted false markers. And if we don't dig, we have no physical proof, just paperwork against paperwork. And Drummond's got a judge in his pocket. Rose touched the map, her finger on the spring. When do we dig? Sam looked at her, 16 years old, child widow, orphan, fighting a man with money and power and the law on his side. April 30th, Sam said. 3 days before trial, night dig, quiet. Ben nodded slowly. It's risky. Everything worth doing is. Outside, spring rain started. The sound of it on the tin roof, soft, steady, the smell of wet earth coming through the window. Life returning after the long winter. Late March brought mud. The thaw turned every road to soup. The sound of it sucking at boots, at wagon wheels, at horses' hooves. Sam rode to town for supplies and felt eyes following him. At the general store, conversation stopped when he entered. Women by the fabric counter turned away. The banker's clerk pretended to study his ledger. Everett, the store owner, packed Sam's order in silence. When Sam paid, Everett leaned close. Town's talking, he said quietly. About what? You and that girl. Why a millionaire rancher's so desperate to keep a 16-year-old under his roof. Everett's face was apologetic. I don't believe it. But Drummond's lawyer's been buying drinks at the saloon, asking questions, planting seeds. Sam's jaw tightened. What kind of questions? The kind that make decent men wonder about your intentions. Sam carried his supplies to the wagon, saw the telegraph operator watching from across the street, saw the banker's wife whisper to her companion. saw the way people looked away when he met their eyes. Drummond was twisting it, making Sam look like the predator. At the feed store, it got worse. Caleb was there with Ben, helping load grain sacks. 2 railroad workers stood near the door. One of them spoke loud enough to carry. Heard Garrison's hoarding that orphan girl. Got her locked up at his ranch like property. Why else would a man his age fight so hard to keep her? Caleb's face went white. He dropped the sack he was holding, turned and ran. Sam found him behind the livery. The boy was crying, trying not to, but failing. They said you're bad, Caleb choked out. Like Mr. Drummond. That you're keeping Rose because... Sam knelt, put his hands on the boy's shoulders. Look at me. Caleb looked up, eyes red and furious. What Drummond's doing, it's called character assassination. He can't win with facts, so he's trying to win with lies. Make people doubt me, make you doubt me. I don't doubt you. Good, because this is going to get worse before it gets better. Sam's voice was steady. He's going to make me look like a villain, make himself look like a hero. That's how men like him operate. They twist truth until nobody knows what's real anymore. Caleb wiped his eyes. What do? We hold on to what we know is true, and we don't let his lies make us ashamed. But when they got home, there was a legal notice nailed to the front door. Character witness depositions required. Rose Henley to testify about living arrangements at Garrison Ranch, scheduled for April 25th. Rose read it and went pale. He's going to ask about where I sleep, about whether you've... She couldn't finish. Martha put an arm around her. That man's got a mind like a sewer, sees filth everywhere because that's all he knows. But the judge will ask under oath, and people will think. Let them think, Sam said. Truth doesn't change based on gossip. But his hands shook when he poured coffee. 40 years of reputation, gone in 3 weeks because of whispers and insinuation. Ben stayed for dinner. Afterward, he pulled Sam aside. I'm going back to the land office tomorrow. There's something wrong with that deed registration. I can feel it. What are you looking for? Proof it's fake. Proof Drummond created it in 1883 and backdated it. Ben's face was grim. Because if we don't prove fraud, you lose your water rights, and Rose loses everything. Ben was gone for 4 days. When he came back, his eyes were bloodshot but triumphant. He spread documents across the kitchen table. The smell of old paper and ink filled the room. Look at this. He pointed to the registration book entry. Drummond's 1869 deed, registered September 1883. Right after the railroad announced the survey route, Rose said. Exactly. Now look at the page itself. Ben pulled out a magnifying lens. See the edge? It's been trimmed and rebound. And the ink, he held up a photograph. Different composition than the entries before and after. I had a chemistry professor at the mining school examine my samples. This ink contains aniline dye. Wasn't commercially available until 1882. Sam leaned closer. So the deed couldn't have been written in 1869. Correct. It was created sometime after 1882, then inserted into the 1883 registry to look legitimate. Ben pulled out another document, and here's the original Henley purchase from 1870, signed by the actual owner at that time, a man named Morrison, who died in 1875. No connection to Drummond's family whatsoever. Rose's hands trembled on the table. Can you prove this in court? I can testify to the evidence, show the photographs, explain the forensics. Ben sat back. But Mercer could still dismiss it as technical details. We need something undeniable. The marker, Sam said. The marker. Ben unrolled his 1868 survey map. If we find BC 1868 carved in that granite, it proves my survey predates Drummond's claim by a year. Makes his entire case impossible. Martha brought whiskey, poured 4 glasses. When? April 30th, night before the trial. Ben looked at Sam. I filed the emergency verification notice today. 3 days warning as required. But Sam, Drummond will know. He'll be watching. Let him watch. If he catches us digging, he'll claim tampering, evidence contamination. Judge Mercer will throw everything out. Rose lifted her glass. Her hand was steady now. Then we don't get caught. They drank. The whiskey burned. Outside, spring rain hammered the roof, the smell of it blowing through the window, clean and cold and full of promise. There's one more thing, Ben said quietly. I talked to Doc Fraser, asked him about Drummond's frequent visits last year, and Drummond owes $12,000 to a card house in Butte. Gambling debts. That $50,000 railroad payment? He's desperate for it. Desperate men make mistakes. Sam looked at the map, at the marker location, at the trial date circled in red. Then we make him make one, Sam said. April 30th, 2 weeks away. Everything riding on a piece of carved granite buried 2 feet under Montana mud. April 28th. Sam rode to the county clerk's office and filed the papers. Emergency boundary verification request. Legal language wrapped around a simple idea. They suspected fraud and wanted to check the original survey. Markers. The clerk stamped it. 3 days' notice as required by law. You can proceed April 30th or after. Sam folded the papers carefully, tucked them in his coat. Legal cover. Barely enough, but it was something. April 30th came cold and clear. The moon was 3/4 full. Good for digging, bad for hiding. They gathered at midnight. Sam, Ben, Rose, and 4 ranch hands who'd worked for Sam 20 years. Men who knew loyalty. Who understood that some fights you took even when the odds were bad. They rode to the spring in silence. The sound of hooves in soft earth, the smell of pine and creek water. Rose rode beside Sam, her face set and determined. You don't have to come, Sam had told her earlier. It's my land, she'd said. I'm coming. They reached the granite outcrop, north face. Ben dismounted and started measuring. Used the old transit by lantern light. The brass gleamed. His initials engraved in the base, BC 1868, caught the flame. Here, Ben said, pointed to a spot beneath the third spur of rock. 2 feet down, the men started digging. Pickaxes breaking earth, shovels scraping stone. The sound of it echoed across the valley, too loud. But there was no quiet way to dig through Montana ground. Rose worked beside them, her hands in the mud, her breath fogging in the cold air. 1 foot down, nothing. 18 inches, still nothing. 2 feet. A shovel struck something solid, not bedrock, smoother. Stop, Ben said. He knelt and scraped mud away with his bare hands. The smell of wet earth and old stone. There, carved deep in granite. Letters worn but clear, BC 1868. Ben's breath came out in a rush. It's here. God, it's here. Sam felt something crack in his chest, relief so sharp it hurt. Rose touched the letters, traced them with her fingers. This proves everything. This proves my survey came first, Ben said. He was already setting up the camera. Magnesium flash powder. Which proves your father bought legitimate land, which proves Drummond's deed is impossible. The flash went off. White light blazing across the darkness. Once, twice, 3 times. Ben measured the marker's exact position, documented the depth, sketched the surrounding rock formation. Everything precise, everything recorded. We need to go, one of the ranch hands said. Been here an hour. Someone could... Lanterns appeared on the ridge, 3 of them, moving fast. Sam's hand went to his rifle. The other men did the same. The lanterns came closer. Drummond's voice cut through the darkness. You're tampering with evidence. I'll have you arrested. 3 riders, Drummond and 2 hired men. They stopped 30 yards away, close enough to see, far enough to run. Drummond's face was twisted with rage. You're destroying your own case, Garrison. We're documenting a survey marker, Sam called back, his voice steady. Filed proper notice 3 days ago. Emergency boundary verification. Section 47. It's legal. Legal? Drummond laughed, sharp and ugly. You dug up disputed property in the middle of the night. Judge Mercer will throw this out, call it planted evidence, fabricated. The marker's been here since 1868, Ben said. He held up his camera. I've documented everything. Position, depth, carving style. It matches my survey records exactly. Your word against mine. Drummond's hand moved toward his coat. 4 rifles came up, Sam's men, fast and sure. Don't, Sam said quietly. Drummond froze. His hired men did too. We're not shooting each other over land, Sam said. Tomorrow, courthouse. Let the law decide. The law? Drummond's voice shook. You think that marker will save you? I'll convince Mercer you carved it tonight, planted false evidence to support your claim. Then convince him, Sam said. But you touch nothing here. We've documented everything. Any changes you make, we'll show. Drummond stared at the marker. At Ben's photographs? At the granite carved deep and weathered by 16 years of Montana seasons. You'll lose, Drummond said, but his voice had doubt in it now. You'll lose everything. He wheeled his horse and rode off. His men followed, the sound of hooves fading into darkness. Sam lowered his rifle. His hands were shaking. Cover it back up, Ben said. Exactly as we found it. I've got everything we need. They worked until dawn, replaced the earth, smoothed it over, left no sign they'd been there except boot prints that rain would wash away. They rode home. As the sun broke over the mountains, Rose fell asleep in the saddle. Sam caught her before she slipped, held her steady the rest of the way. At the ranch, Martha had breakfast waiting. The children were still sleeping. The house smelled like coffee and fresh bread and wood smoke. Normal things. Precious things. Rose sat at the kitchen table. Her hands were blistered from digging, her face streaked with mud. She looked at Sam. What if Judge Mercer doesn't believe us? Sam poured coffee. Then we appeal, and appeal again. But your water rights, Rose. He sat across from her. I was dead before you knocked on my door. 40 years building an empire for a son who left, for a wife who died, for nobody. His voice roughened. What's the point of 15,000 acres if there's no one to share sunrise with? Tears ran down her face. If we lose, I'm sorry. If we lose together. Sam reached across the table, took her hand. That's family. Ben checked his pocket watch, the sound of it clicking open. Court convenes in 4 hours. Rose wiped her eyes, stood. Then we should get ready. Outside, spring morning broke gold and clear. Birds singing, water flowing from the spring, the disputed spring, down into Sam's pastures. 2,000 cattle depending on it. $60,000 in livestock. 40 years of work. All of it balanced on carved granite in the hope that truth mattered more than money. The Silverton courthouse was packed, every bench filled, people standing along the walls, the smell of wool coats and nervous sweat. Spring mud tracked across the floor. Judge Mercer sat behind his desk like a man who'd already decided. Cold eyes, thin mouth, the kind of face that calculated profit before justice. Drummond sat at the plaintiff's table. Clean suit, polished boots, his silver watch chain gleaming, 2 lawyers beside him. Sam, Rose, and Ben sat across the aisle, Doc Frazier behind them, Martha, the 4 ranch hands who dug through the night, a handful of ranchers who understood what water rights meant. The rest of the gallery was railroad men and townspeople who'd come for the spectacle. 10 o'clock. Judge Mercer's gavel fell. Case of Drummond versus Henley, with counterclaim against Garrison. Proceed. Drummond's lead lawyer stood. Tall man, voice like honey over gravel. He presented the 1869 deed, explained how Samuel Henley had purchased land that wasn't legitimately for sale, how Rose's inheritance was therefore invalid, how Sam Garrison had been stealing water for 15 years. $40,000 in unpaid water rights, the lawyer said, plus immediate cessation of access. Mr. Drummond is willing to settle, $30,000. Miss Henley returns to his guardianship. Mr. Garrison acknowledges the debt, the gallery murmured. $30,000. More money than most men saw in a lifetime. Mr. Garrison? Judge Mercer looked at Sam. That's a generous offer? Sam stood. We're going to trial, Your Honor. The lawyer smiled. Very well. We call our first witness, Victor Drummond. Drummond took the stand, told his story smooth as silk, how he'd been appointed guardian to protect Rose, how he'd discovered the 1869 deed among his late father's papers, how he was merely protecting the girl's best interests. She's confused, Drummond said, looked at Rose with practiced sympathy. Traumatized by her father's death, by losing her young husband. She doesn't understand legal matters. That's why the court appointed me. And Mr. Garrison, the lawyer prompted. I believe his intentions are good, but he's interfering with a legal guardianship, taking advantage of a vulnerable girl. Rose's hands clenched on the table. Then it was their turn. Ben Cho took the stand first, presented his original 1868 survey log, the notation about the spring marker, the photographs from 2 nights ago. This marker proves my survey predates Mr. Drummond's supposed deed by 1 year, Ben said. He passed the photographs to the judge. The carving style matches my other work from that period. The weathering is consistent with 16 years of exposure. This is not new work. Drummond's lawyer stood. Your Honor, this alleged marker was excavated illegally, in the middle of the night, on disputed property. For all we know, Mr. Cho carved it himself 2 days ago to support his claim. The gallery erupted. Mercer's gavel cracked. Mr. Cho, Mercer said, cold, did you have permission to excavate that property? I filed an emergency verification request, Ben said. April 28th, 3 days before excavation as required by Section 47, on disputed land, while this case was pending. Mercer looked at the photographs with distaste. I'm inclined to dismiss this evidence as tainted. Sam's stomach dropped. Then Doc Frazier testified, described Rose's injuries when she arrived, the restraint marks, the malnourishment, the hypothermia in both children. In my medical opinion, Doc said, those children were neglected, possibly abused. Miss Henley's decision to flee was reasonable given the circumstances. Doctor, Drummond's lawyer said smoothly, children fear discipline. Isn't it possible Miss Henley simply didn't want to follow household rules? I've treated hundreds of patients in 40 years, Doc said, his voice hard. I know the difference between discipline and cruelty. Then Rose took the stand. The courtroom went silent, every eye on her. 16 years old in a borrowed dress, hands folded in her lap, but her voice didn't shake. She told about her father's death, about Drummond's guardianship, about the papers she'd been forced to sign. I didn't understand all the words, she said. They were legal terms, complicated. He said it was for my protection. that I needed a man to manage the property until I turned 21. And you agreed? I was scared. Alone. My father was dead. My husband was dead. I had 2 small children depending on me. And she looked at Drummond. He said if I didn't sign, we'd be split up, sent to different orphanages. Did Mr. Drummond ever threaten you? He locked us in the attic room. Said we were going east on the orphan train, that Caleb and Iris would be separated. Her voice cracked. I broke the window to escape. Drummond's lawyer stood. Your Honor, may I? Mercer nodded. The lawyer approached Rose, gentle, concerned. Miss Henley, you're living at Mr. Garrison's ranch now, correct? Yes. Alone with him, no chaperone, no female guardian. Rose's face flushed. Martha Quinn is there, but you sleep under his roof, eat at his table. A 16-year-old girl and a 62-year-old man. The lawyer's voice dripped false concern. Has Mr. Garrison ever touched you inappropriately? The gallery gasped. Sam started to stand, but Ben grabbed his arm. Rose's eyes blazed. Mr. Garrison has been nothing but kind. He gave us food when we were starving, warmth when we were freezing, safety when we had none. As her voice rang through the courtroom. He asked nothing in return. Not money, not land, not anything else your filthy mind is imagining. Miss Henley, you're trying to make him look like a monster because you can't win with facts, because your whole case is built on lies and forged papers and greed. She stood, pointed at Drummond. That man locked children in an attic, sold them like livestock, and you're asking if Mr. Garrison touched me? The courtroom erupted again. Mercer's gavel hammered. Order! Miss Henley, sit down. But Rose wasn't done. I heard your watch, Mr. Drummond. When you came to threaten us that first morning, I heard it chime. The same sound I heard every time you locked me in that room. Every time you told me to sign something I didn't understand. Her voice broke. I know that sound. It's in my nightmares. Drummond's hand went to his vest pocket, touched the watch. His face had gone pale. Finally, Sam testified, presented his 40-year ledger, every page documenting water flow from the spring, cattle counts, rainfall measurements, proof that his ranch depended on that water, had depended on it since 1870, when Rose's father gave permission. Handshake agreement, Sam said. Samuel Henley and I were neighbors, friends. He let me use the spring. I helped him with supplies. That's how things worked. No written contract? Mercer asked. No, Your Honor, just trust. Drummond's lawyer presented the railroad telegram, $50,000. Proof of motive for Sam to fight. You need that water, Mr. Garrison. Admit it. Your entire operation depends on it. You're fighting to protect your empire, not these children. Sam looked at the man. I'm fighting for both, and if I had to choose, I'd choose them. Even at the cost of $60,000 in cattle? Even then, the lawyer smiled, thought he'd won, proved Sam's desperation. Your Honor, Drummond's lawyer concluded, Mr. Garrison stands to lose everything if my client controls that spring. He has every reason to fabricate evidence, to plant false markers, to manipulate this young girl into supporting his claim. We ask that you dismiss the marker evidence and rule in favor of Mr. Drummond's legitimate 1869 deed. Judge Mercer leaned back, looked at the documents, at the photographs, at Sam and Rose and Ben. Garrison, he said slowly, you admit to excavating disputed property without explicit permission? I filed proper notice, Your Honor. 3 days as required. On property that's the subject of this lawsuit, while the case was pending, Mercer's face was hard. That shows, at minimum, extremely poor judgment. At worst, it suggests evidence tampering. Sam's heart hammered. I'm inclined to dismiss the marker evidence as tainted, which leaves us with competing deeds and no physical proof. Mercer looked at Rose, and a young woman whose testimony may be influenced by gratitude to the man currently housing her. The courtroom held its breath. Therefore, a voice from the gallery, clear and strong. Your Honor, if I may address the court. Every head turned. Judge Harriet Blackwell stood from her seat in the back row, white hair, stern face, the weight of 20 years on the territorial bench behind her. Mercer's jaw tightened. Judge Blackwell, you're not counsel in this case. No, Your Honor, but I am an officer of this court, and I believe there's a point of law that needs clarification. Montana Territory Revised Statutes, Section 47, Subsection 3. Her voice carried like a bell. Emergency boundary verification when fraud is suspected. If proper notice is filed with the county clerk, excavation is permitted even on disputed property. The notice must be filed 3 days prior to excavation. She walked down the aisle, every eye on her. Mr. Garrison filed his notice April 28th. Excavation occurred April 30th, 3 days, exactly as required. She stopped at the judge's desk. Check your clerk's records, Your Honor. The filing is there, stamped and witnessed. Mercer's face went red. Clerk? The clerk scrambled through papers, found it. Filed April 28th, Your Honor. Stamped by County Clerk Morrison. Emergency boundary verification request. Samuel Garrison, petitioner. The courtroom exploded. Drummond shot to his feet. His lawyers conferred frantically. Mercer stared at the filing. At Judge Blackwell. At the photographs of the marker. The evidence is admissible, Blackwell said quietly. And if it's admissible, Your Honor, then the case is clear. Benjamin Cho's 1868 survey predates Mr. Drummond's supposed 1869 deed, which means the boundaries Cho established are legitimate, which means Samuel Henley's 1870 purchase was valid, which means Rose Henley is the legal owner of that property. She looked at Drummond. And it means Mr. Drummond's deed is fraudulent, as is his guardianship, as are his claims against Mr. Garrison. Silence. Complete and total. Judge Mercer's hands shook on the papers. He looked at Drummond, at the evidence, at the packed courtroom, waiting. Based on the evidence presented, he said slowly, voice tight, and the admissibility of the boundary marker documentation, I rule as follows. He drew a breath. The Henley 400-acre parcel is confirmed as the legitimate property of Rose Henley, held in trust until age 21. Trustee, Samuel Garrison. Rose grabbed Sam's hand. Water rights easement from said property to Garrison Ranch is confirmed per the 1870 verbal agreement, now formalized in writing. Mr. Drummond's counterclaim is dismissed. Drummond's face went purple. Furthermore, Mercer continued, his voice harder now, I am referring Victor Drummond to the territorial prosecutor for investigation of fraud, document forgery, and unlawful coercion of a minor, and recommending disbarment proceedings. The gavel fell. The courtroom erupted. Drummond stood, shaking. His lawyers grabbed his arms. The marshal moved forward. Victor Drummond, the marshal said, you're under arrest. Drummond's eyes found Sam. Pure hate. This isn't over. Yes, Sam said quietly. It is. They let him out in irons. His silver watch chain glittering. That chime Rose would never have to hear again. The courthouse steps were packed with people. Ranchers clapped Sam on the back. Women approached Rose with apologies in their eyes. Ben shook hands until his arm hurt. The banker who doubted Sam pushed through the crowd. Mr. Garrison, about that loan for water infrastructure? Seems you won't be needing it after all. Sam just looked at him, said nothing. The banker had the grace to look ashamed. Martha wrapped Rose in a fierce hug. You did good, girl. Your mama would be proud. Doc Frazier stood with Caleb and Iris. The children had been at the ranch during the trial, but Martha brought them to town for the verdict. Iris ran to Rose, arms wide. Caleb walked more slowly, but his face was bright. We won? The boy asked. We won, Sam said. The marshal led Drummond past them, hands in irons, face twisted with rage and humiliation. Rose stepped into his path. The marshal stopped. Everyone went quiet. Rose looked at Drummond, at the man who'd locked her in an attic, who'd tried to sell her siblings, who'd called her property. You tried to buy me for $200, she said. Her voice carried across the courthouse square, clear and strong. Mr. Garrison gave me a home for free. That's the difference between paper and people. Drummond's mouth opened, closed. He had no words left. Rose turned her back on him, walked to Sam, took his hand. The marshal led Drummond away. The crowd parted to let them through. Some faces showed satisfaction. Others showed shame. Everyone had an opinion. Few had acted. The telegraph operator appeared at Sam's elbow. Mr. Garrison, message came through during the trial. From San Francisco. Sam took the telegram, unfolded it, read it twice. His hands shook. What is it? Rose asked. Sam's voice came out rough. It's from my son, David. He read aloud. Father, received your letter. Coming home for summer. Want to meet the family you wrote about. Arriving June 1st. David. Rose's eyes filled. You wrote to him? Month ago. Told him about 3 frozen children who reminded me what family meant. Sam folded the telegram carefully. Didn't think he'd answer. Ben squeezed his shoulder. Looks like you're getting your son back too. Bum. They rode home in the wagon, all of them together, Sam and Rose on the bench, Ben riding alongside, the children in the back with Martha. The spring afternoon warm and bright, the smell of new grass and pine, the sound of meadowlarks. At the ranch, they gathered in the main room. Sam pulled out the spring rights deed, the one Judge Mercer had signed and sealed that afternoon. Official, legal, permanent. He laid it on the kitchen table. The paper crisp and new, the ink still drying. Rose Henley, legal owner of 400 acres including spring and mineral rights. Trustee, Samuel Garrison. Water easement confirmed, Garrison Ranch. Rose traced the words with her finger. Her name. Written in law. Real. What happens when I turn 21? She asked. Sam looked at her. Then you're free to do whatever you want with the land. Sell it, keep it, partner with me, or go your own way. What if I want to stay? Then you stay, as a partner, not as a ward. He pulled out another document. I had my lawyer draw these up last week, just in case we won. Adoption papers. For Rose Henley, for Caleb Morrison, for Iris Morrison. You don't have to decide now, Sam said quickly. It's been a long day, a long few months. If you want time to think, yes, Rose said. Sam blinked. Yes? Yes, we want to stay, as family. If you'll have us. Sam's vision blurred. He looked at Caleb. The boy nodded, solemn and sure. At Iris, who smiled and said, Can I call you Grandpa? Sam laughed. It came out more like a sob. Close enough. Ben cleared his throat, pulled something from his coat, the surveyor's transit, brass gleaming, the initials BC 1868 engraved in the base. This belongs to you now, he said to Rose. Your land's marked true, boundaries legal, protect it well. Rose took it carefully, heavy and precise and beautiful. I will, I promise. Martha brought out a cake. Where she'd found time to bake it, Sam didn't know, but there it was. Simple and sweet and covered in spring wildflowers from the meadow. They ate on the porch as the sun set. The taste of honey and butter, the sound of children laughing, the smell of pine smoke from the chimney mixing with apple blossoms. Sam looked at his land. 15,000 acres, 2,000 cattle, 40 years of work, and 3 people who made it worth something. That evening, Sam took Rose to his study, showed her the old ledger, 40 years of records. Every cow counted, every gallon of water measured, every expense and profit logged in careful ink. He closed it, set it on the shelf. Then he opened a new ledger. The pages blank and waiting. On the first page he wrote, Garrison Henley Ranch, May 1st, 1884. First entry, family secured. He handed the pen to Rose. You write the next one. She took it, her hand steady now. No longer the trembling, frozen girl from January. She thought for a moment, then wrote, May 7, 1884. Spring water flowing clear, cattle healthy, children safe, home. Sam read it, nodded. That's good. That's real good. They walked back to the main room. Ben was showing Caleb how to read survey maps. Martha was braiding Iris's hair. The fire crackled. Coffee boiled on the stove. Normal things. Precious things. Rose sat beside Caleb. What are you learning? How to measure land, the boy said. Ben says I could be a surveyor someday, if I practice. You could, Ben said. Got the patience for it. The careful hands. Iris climbed into Sam's lap. Unexpected. She was 4 years old and small for her age, and she smelled like soap and wood smoke. Tell me a story, she demanded. Sam looked at Rose, at Martha, at Ben, at Caleb, who was watching with those 2 old eyes that were finally starting to look young again. All right, Sam said. Once upon a time, there was a man who built a big ranch. Biggest ranch in the territory. He worked 40 years, built fences and barns and corrals, counted his cattle every morning, but he lived alone, and the ranch was empty. Iris snuggled closer. Was he sad? Very sad. He'd forgotten what happy felt like. What happened? One winter night, 3 people knocked on his door. And they weren't knocking to take something. They were knocking to give something. Oh, what did they give? Sam's voice roughened. They gave him a reason to wake up in the morning. Iris thought about that. Did he keep them? He tried, but a bad man said they belonged to him. So the rancher had to fight. Did he win? Yes, little one, he won. Iris smiled. Good. I like happy endings. Me too, Sam said. Later, after the children were asleep in the room Sam had built for them, after Martha went home, after Ben rode back to town, Sam and Rose stood on the porch. The stars were out, thick as spilled salt. The smell of night-blooming jasmine carried on the wind. The sound of the spring, Rose's spring, flowing down to Sam's pastures. Your son comes in June, Rose said. 5 weeks. Are you nervous? Terrified. Sam's hands gripped the porch rail. 10 years. He left because I chose this ranch over him, over his mother when she was dying. I counted cattle while she faded, balanced books while he grieved. You were different then. Doesn't change what I did. Rose touched his arm. People deserve second chances. You gave me one. Gave Caleb and Iris one. Maybe your son wants to give you one too. Sam looked at her, 16 years old, child widow, orphan, the strongest person he'd ever met. When did you get so wise? When a grumpy rancher taught me that family isn't blood. It's choice. They stood together as the moon rose. Silver light across Montana, the ranch quiet and full and home. Inside, the new ledger waited, blank pages ready for whatever came next. Outside, spring deepened into summer, the land healing, the water flowing, the family growing. And for the first time in 15 years, Samuel Garrison looked at his empire and saw what it was always meant to be, not walls to keep grief out, but a foundation to build love on. 1 month later, early June, Sam stood on his porch with coffee, same spot as that January morning, when 3 frozen figures changed his life. But everything else was different. The steam from his cup rose lazy in warm air. The smell of it mixed with apple blossoms from the tree he'd planted in February. The tiny sapling had leaves now, green and reaching. Through the kitchen window, he could see Rose teaching Caleb to read survey maps, the boy's finger tracing boundary lines, learning what his land meant, what it could become. Iris was in the garden with Martha, planting vegetables in careful rows, talking to the seeds like they could hear her. Maybe they could. The spring, Rose's spring, flowed clear and strong down to his pastures. 2,000 cattle grazed fat and healthy. $60,000 in livestock, secure. The water rights legal now? Written in Judge Mercer's hand, permanent. Sam had measured worth in acres for 40 years. Cattle counts and ledger ink and fence posts stretching to the horizon. Built an empire and called it success while his wife died and his son left and the house stayed empty. Took 3 frozen children to teach him. Land means nothing if there's no one to walk it with you. Rose joined him on the porch. 2 mugs of coffee. She handed him one even though he already had his. Smiled when he noticed. "Ben's teaching me surveying this summer," she said. "Wants help marking the eastern boundary. You'll be better at it than I ever was. You taught me what matters." Sam thought about his son, David, arriving today. The telegram said noon. Sam had read it so many times the paper wore soft. "Reckon we'll see," Sam said quietly. Rose leaned against the rail beside him. "Family's not blood or papers. It's who you'd walk through a blizzard for." "And who walks back for you," Sam finished. Below them, spring water flowed. Above them, morning birds sang. Behind them, children's laughter spilled through open windows. The land would endure. But it was the people on it that made it home.